There's two kinds of ways to make knives, machine-made and handmade. On one end, we have the beloved Kyiv, perfect knives cranked out into thousands per day by elaborate machines. And on the other hand, there's the highly respected custom knife makers who truly make everything from scratch and can make your dream knife a reality if you're willing to wait and
if you have coin.
Of course, most of the industry is somewhere in between, but you can still draw a line that lays out which are mostly machine-made and which are mostly handmade. Bushcraft, paracord, and survival knives, BPS knives for short, might be making the best value handmade knives right now with their incredible prices and vast portfolio. So, can they make the cut for that title? Let's see.
First, they come with edges so refined that they make knives 10 times their price kick the dirt. BPS's blade blanks and handle scales are cut out by machines, but after that, every single step has a human hand guiding it.
By the way, by handmade, I mean that human hands, as opposed to a big jig, are on the knife as it's being made, or for most of the processes when I say handmade knives. That's what I mean by that. Okay, back to the cool dramatic thing. Since they're using simple carbon steels, they can comfortably heat treat in-house and get to work. And dare I say, there is something special about BPS's carbon steel. But more on that later.
Their grinds are done on belt sanders, probably up to 600 grit, and then the bevel is refined on a buffing wheel to a much higher grit with absolutely no micro bevel. That's how they get so sharp. Simply put, someone spends the time and attention the knife deserves. And for the basic, the whole knife is buffed and polished to a mere finish. And both of these are perfect Scandies. I own other knives that are considerably more expensive than these two, and have come with uneven grinds. Still perform great, but they are simply not as well finished as BPS's. The handle scales are pretty straightforward. They're not done by hand, and it looks like they're cut and shaped by CNC machines and are only fitted and finished by hand. But boom, pair it with a well-made leather sheath and done. By the way, BPS Knives makes a stainless offering as well, but I recommend sticking to their carbon steel option. And again, I promise I'll get to the steel later, but steel doesn't matter if we don't talk about geometry. And these knives were made for cutting. And that's just what they'll do. And one of the...
Okay, we get it. Now, go on with the video.
And boom, knife. These are pretty simple tools. They don't complicate themselves in making them because they're targeting an entry-level price point around $30, plus or minus 10.
As you can appreciate, I've got two. The basic one full tang, the BS1FT, and the hunting knife 5 or HK5. Both of them in 1066 high carbon steel.
What?
Yeah, I know. I'll get to it later. I'll get to the steel later, I promise. Pero there is mar, there is mais there one thing. But there is one thing that these knives do that other manufacturers simply seem to have going over their heads. Can you guess what that is? Grant them, yes.
They have a full tang. They're extremely inexpensive.
Yes, it does, and yes, it is, but not quite that. Thank you, though. Martin.
Yeah, that is the best mirror that I've...
Close? Not quite, though. I mean, it's sort of worn off. It's got a pretty decent one, but not quite that. BB.
Geometry is one of the single biggest factors that's going to affect the edge cutting retention or durability of a knife. And
yes, that's it. Cutting performance. Bingo. For this exact video, I had actually gotten this knife. I was planning on just doing the BS1, but then I got this one to show you this. This is how the HK5 comes out of the box. Tree topping sharp. And as BB keeps saying over and over and over again, geometry is what cuts. Hardness says how long, and the steel you select is what's going to define how well you can get, how far you can go with either of those and still have a functioning knife. And 1066 actually fares pretty damn well for cutting performance. Out here in the wilderness, I've been rocking my HK5 on my hip here to take care of my typical outdoorsman needs. It's a great knife for that, but I've also been carrying the BS1FT as a neck knife for protection of my virginity. And while I use this here BPS HK5 to make quick work of this old buck, where you've gotta give it to this so-called hunting knife is actually in bushcraft.
I started carving a Morse Kohansky tri-stick with the HK5 and it was pretty easy with this grind. That super keen Scandi just bites into the wood, and the funky handle isn't too bad either for this. I'm just lucky it fits me right. Yeah, but here's the kicker. Remember how geometry cuts? The BS1FT did even better.
Float through and watch it all shimmer. Let go and don't touch the dimmer. Grab at water, it gets away, or so they say. All that is meant to be. This path you're on will set you free. The cosmos knows what's best for you, or so it's supposed to. Reach only for what you can change. Control is a car that won't go. Don't listen to fear or ego. Something like that, I don't know. Find a oneness with yourself. Change perceptions for your health. How you see beats what you see. But maybe that's just me. It's all you. It's all you.
That was a lot quicker, and that's clearly because geometry cuts. Now, obviously, one can only assume that the trade-off is strength, right?
Piano looping through my brain. From the dark, I'm light again. Stronger, brighter than yesterday. Or so I'm told anyway. Don't attach to former self. Chase the lights, don't hug the shelf. Forward is all I come to see. A kind of spiritual gluttony. Rain pours through the night on the cafe.
That was pretty impressive, gotta say. BF1FT surprised me with the abuse it took, but BPS has also shown that this knife can take some pretty ridiculous abuse. And that it has pretty great tensile strength. But keep in mind, that's their video created by them, and it stands to reason that they're showing their knives in the best possible light. And that's not unreasonable either, because carbon steels generally harden between 57 to 59 HRC, which these are, is really, really tough. It's known for that. And the tri-sticks we carved and batoned through were made from very, very hard oak dowels that I bought for consistency, but they're just really hard. It's harder than most wood that you'll encounter in the wilderness. And remember BBB's wise words? Geometry cuts. Hardness says how long, so let's see how those edges fared. First, BF1FTS on phone book paper. That's, you know, it's got some trouble, but it's making its way through. I'm gonna call that fine. The edge held up, not without damage, but it can cut through. It ripped through the end, but okay, this is the one that'll define it. Yeah, not without damage, but you still have a very competent working edge after that abuse, after cutting really hard into that hardwood. Let's see how the HK5 did. Are you ready? Okay, most of the damage is towards the top, the back here, which I hardly used while carving. Oh my goodness. No, like nothing. Caught a little nick here, but like nothing. The HK5 passed with flying colors. That was a lot of abuse. That was oh. Well. BPS slogan is let the adventure begin. So I'm gonna honor that and take these on a day hike. But first, I'm gonna touch up the edges, although this one doesn't need it at all, on a whetstone and see how well they sharpen and take it back.
Watch this. Oh, hallelujah. Get up right now. I'm hearing something real powerful for someone. And now listen to this.
That steel impressed me with how easy it is to sharpen and how sharp it gets. But another confession, it's not really 1066. It's if you change the language on the website to Ukrainian, you'll see it's detailed as 65H or 65H if we use Latin characters. That might be actually 65G from Poland too. So I don't really know. I don't have a way to verify. But it is basically American 1066. It's the exact same recipe and for the exact same intended use, spring steel. You and I have hiked all this way to make it to here, which is a good spot to make some riverside breakfast.
Reaching out to hurting people. This is what you do. Something more than it was. I like that, don't you?
I have bad news. I'm out of time. I need to go. Fiddlesticks. There's a reason Can't Get Right is in the name of this channel. Thing is, I told my loved ones that where I am, there's going to be no signal. So if they don't hear from me past a certain time, then they should call for help because I might be in trouble. You know, I might get jacked, I might get hurt, something like that. So I need to make my way back, cut this adventure short, and there's a reason this channel's called The Madman Can't Get Right. So we'll finish talking about these knives at home now, and that little adventure took quite the toll on our HK5's edge. As you can see, there's some edge damage there, but here's the weird part. It can still cut phone book paper. I went digging in the home forest and found this this 2x4. It is pine, but most of the time I'm making fires out of pine when I'm backpacking anyway, because it's good for the environment that way. Pine is somewhat expendable because of how quickly it reproduces, so nature's not going to miss it if you use pine for your fires in camp. So, let's make a fire.
Naughty.
My father and my father. If I were a wealthy man.
Naughty, naughty. You teasing me, you naughty, naughty.
My father and my father said we better love each other. My father and my father said we better love each other. My father and my father.
Well, that gave us plenty to talk about. Not a small chip at all. That is actually pretty big. I had to come inside to get a closer look at the footage and really get down to the bottom of what happened to this blade, or how it failed. But before I do that, I mentioned that BPS knives are made in Ukraine, and specifically in Brovary in the Kyiv Oblast on the eastern side. And this is what that looks like right now, thanks to the Russian war. Not only that, but Ukraine's steel industry has also been targeted in the invasion, and all of this sort of sums together in the obvious conclusion that BPS knives are not going to be made in the foreseeable future. That goes without saying. The situation is just very grim. I don't mean to get into geopolitics, and I'm not. This is about BPS knives, Ukrainian knives, and how Serhiy and Pavlo, the people behind, and the people who work for them behind BPS knives, how they're not able to do what they love because of this very stupid war. Don't be fooled. This has little to do with anything other than Russian leadership wanting to dictate which countries Ukrainians as a people, as a country, want to be friends with. That's it. It's not difficult to understand. So because I don't like bullies, I'm pushing these knives forward, and yeah, there's a good number of them still in stock on Amazon, so if this encourages you to go get one, hopefully that'll help the folks of BPS Knives get back on their feet once the war is over, or once they can. I also bought that cool Ghost of Kyiv shirt that Funker530 made to donate to charity, and I thought that was really cool, so I bought one. And now that we're here, one of my favorite shops for knife sharpening supplies, Gritomatic, carries Ukrainian products, and he's donating a lot of proceeds from those sales to charity, a lot of money actually, and yeah, Konstantin in general runs an awesome operation there. Here's some Ukrainian CBN stropping compound that
that I got. It's terrific. It's great for the price. I'm going to be using it to restore this knife soon. So subscribe if you want to see that. And to make it clear, I have no affiliation with any of these products that I've talked about. They're just very well-deserved shout-outs. Now, back to the steel. Forgive my long tangent. Unlike tangent, the steel is very simple. It's not complex at all. It's a simple carbon steel that's a little bit different from 1095 and 1075, which are the first ones that come to my mind when someone mentions carbon steel. Unlike those, 1066 or 65 has chromium and silicon. Just a little bit though, and to add to that, it has a higher concentration of manganese. That's the most prevalent element in the steel, behind iron of course, and if that sounds a lot like 5160 to you, a spring steel commonly used in custom knives, that's because it is a lot like 5160, just with less chromium. Now, spring steel usually isn't anyone's first pick for steel because there are many esoteric steels available at the same price, so why bother? In the case of BPS, why did they go with this? I think it's probably because the steel might be Ukrainian. One, it's relatively manganese rich, and maybe that has to do with Ukraine being Europe's largest producer of manganese. Maybe it doesn't. It's not really a rare element. But two, they can get this steel at a pretty good price to sell these knives at the price that they do, which makes me assume that it's locally produced or sourced. That's the best explanation I have for thinking that. Anyway, manganese isn't actually a good carbide former. It's very good for grain structure and allowing a strong steel to form despite not having any carbides. Silicon adds to that, so the silicon and the manganese work together. And on the other hand, you have carbon and chromium working together as your carbide formers, which will do the actual cutting. The result is a pretty decent steel that's high in strength, excellent toughness actually, despite that, I'll get to it in a second, and terrific edge stability at this HRC. You can even see the thing wobble in slow-mo, distributing the shock from impact all throughout. Obviously there's Serhi's video with the BS1FT, just bending it, and it's like nothing happened to it. Didn't permanently deform. But then if the steel's so good for the price, why did this knife fail? The truth is that this would have done some horrible damage to any knife. Let's take a closer look at the footage. As I batoned into the knot, the grain direction of this hardened, resin-rich chunk of wood goes perpendicular to the direction I'm batoning in. Most of the tang is being clasped by the wood, and every strike of the baton has me forcing the edge one way, and the knot is fighting back in a completely perpendicular direction, while the tang is being held tight and not letting that shock distribute. The thin edge took the brunt of that and simply gave out. In layman's terms, I misused the knife. It's why your grandpa kept telling you that knives aren't for batoning. Look at how easily I managed to split that really complicated bit of wood for the knife with a simple wooden wedge that I carved. It's usually how I split wood when I'm at camp and when I'm not filming myself smashing my wood for YouTube. There's another point I picked up on. The wood only chipped a fragment about 10% the size of the large one. The reason we got the large chip was because me noticing. I batoned the knife into the first fragment that had chipped off, forcing hardened steel onto hardened steel, making the situation worse and taking a big chunk off this edge. Now, as I mentioned before, this isn't a catastrophic failure. We can grind this out. We can grind this out and have a perfectly functional knife. And as you saw, despite the chip, we kept going and going and successfully created a fire. In the exact same circumstances, I think that many other knives of this thickness, especially with taller grinds and a thick micro bevel, would have actually snapped, because keep in mind that despite this having a very thin, scanty grind, most of the stock goes down all the way, so you still have a lot of strength in this blade, just have a very thin bevel. Still, I guess this answers why so many knife makers trade geometry off for a little extra strength. There's no better way to represent that at all. Now, to get any performance out of this 1066, BPS Knives has to make these knives as thin as they are in order to cut, because this is not a very carbide-rich steel. Wear resistance is pretty good simply because it's ground so thin. The few exposed carbides are very well supported by the strong grain structure. Remember, not a carbide-rich steel, but fatigue will eventually set in and those carbides are eventually going to wear out of the matrix and the knife will suddenly lose its edge when it does. It'll be in a snap. So if you're planning on using these for a long session, I would plan on packing a pocket sharpening system or a pocket strap, something of the like, because you might need it. It shouldn't be a problem because this is super easy to sharpen. So yeah, in short, BPS has made the best out of 1066 steel, and it shows that they understand what they're working with and they've created a quality product. To close, here are some do's and don'ts. Do check the fit and finish and cover any rough spot with cheap... Do check the fit and finish and cover up any rough spots with cheap abrasives. The fit and finish on these knives is good, not great. Don't baton through knots. Do shamelessly sharpen these knives with the cheapest stone you can get. I tried the $15 Amazon Basic stone and for some reason this steel loved it. It sharpened really well. On the other hand, they basically went up to my expensive Russian diamond stone and told it to go and it did go di nahuy. Don't forget to thoroughly wipe the blade down after use. This is carbon steel. Do use the included vagina. Sheath. Lost in translation. It's pretty good. A little soft out of the box, yeah. So if you want to harden it, make it more durable and shape it to the knife right away, melt beeswax into these and let them soak until it saturates. You'll thank me later. Speaking of the sheaths, don't cut your leather sheaths. Knives will cut them if you're not careful. Most of you know this, but I know someone needs to hear it. Do remove the scales and let them soak up some boiled linseed oil for a couple hours, then let them dry. While that goes on, protect the tang from corrosion forever with an antioxidant grease like Dow 33 and just leave it on. Don't forget to tighten down those screws really well and secure them with blue Loctite. If you don't do this, the scales will kind of drift. Do buy them. They're great for the price. Probably won't be back in stock again for a while, if ever. And they are indeed, in my opinion, the best value handmade knives you can get. And for some applications, they're the best value knives overall. So guys, take care of yourselves. Thank you for watching this video so much. Subscribe if you want to see more, yada yada. You've heard this before from your favorite creators. Might as well click the like button now while you're at it, huh? I'm really enjoying myself making these knife videos, so I'll be making some more. Last thing, some dad advice, the idea ripped straight out of Garantham. Support people who stand up to their bullies. Later, guys.